welcome to Thought Leader Magazine. This is a special edition. This is PodMax interview number 2, which is really exciting. If you're not familiar with PodMax, you got to check it out. I believe it's going to be one of the biggest podcasting events in the country, possibly even in the world. Very, very cool. Super excited to be part of it. But I'm more excited to the fact that who I got paired up with. I got paired up with Gina Wade. Gina Wade is an event producer and designer who runs Gina Wade Creative. And I got to tell you something. I looked at all the bios of all the people I could be matched up with, and I started laughing because when I was trying to plan my intro, I was like, oh, I should add this, but I got to add this. I got to add this. I was like, I'm going to be giving a 5-minute intro because Gina, you have done it all. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Introduce yourself a little bit, but I'm giving you permission to brag a little bit. Tell me some of the cool stuff that you're talking about here. You're talking about Grammys, you're talking about Oscars, you're talking about huge, massive events. Just give me a little bit about your bio. This is me giving you permission to brag. Go.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not the best bragger, but I'll do my best. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. I'm so thrilled to be here. So I started my business in 2007, and the catalyst for that was ultimately because I had outgrown every job that I'd ever had. And I'm one of those people that's really motivated by pushing myself and trying out new things and just finding opportunities. And so when I sort of hit the ceiling in some of my jobs, I was like, I feel like I could do this on my own and probably find opportunities that I never even realized existed for myself. So I started Gina Wade Creative in 2007. We are an event design and production firm. We've worked with an incredible list of clients. I'm really, really proud of that. We've worked with Netflix, Hulu. We've done the Vanity Fair Oscar party for 8 years. We've worked with InStyle Magazine, Showtime. Red Light Management, Warner Music. We recently, before the shutdown, did the Warner Music Grammy party with Lizzo as a live performer. We've worked with brands such as Hello Bello with Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. The list really goes on and on and on. We also, what sets us aside and makes us a little bit different is that we also are experts in sales and marketing as far as event production. So ultimately what we do, everybody on my team has a hospitality background. So we've all worked at hotels and restaurants and whatnot, which I think helps us bring a really different set of eyes and knowledge to the events that we produce because we really understand how those venues work. But venues have hired us because traditionally venues, it's a lot of, I hate to call it passive selling, but it's reactive selling. They pick up the phone, they get inquiries, this, that, and the other, especially in Los Angeles, where to do a sales call, it's not like New York where you can go and visit like 16 clients in 3 hours. To drive one place to the other in LA can take you 3 hours to get from point A to point B. Yeah. So I will go into hotels and restaurants and event venues and basically strategize with them. What clients are they getting? What clients are they not? What could that possibly be? And we kind of function as hired guns to go out and bring those clients into them. So we increase their footprint, we increase their sales and their revenue in the scope of private events. And we've been really successful with that. We work with an incredible list of venues, the London West Hollywood, L'Armitage in Beverly Hills, the historic Hollywood Athletic Club. We are just now, one of our new clients is the Hollywood Post 43. They have a 482 seat theater that nobody knows about, especially because right before COVID, we thought we'd be doing movie premieres and all these things. But we pivoted that to a drive-in. We've just really been very good at looking at things from a creative angle and finding ways, not just to build our business, but build the business of our clients as well. So it's been a really, really, really fun ride. And yeah, we've been very lucky and very fortunate to be a part of some really phenomenal events.
That is really, really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is really, really cool. I wrote down a bunch of notes on where I wanted to take this, and I could take this in like 5 different ways. But before we get into kind of the meat of this thing, it's just like, so I'm looking at your bio. When did you actually feel like you started in the business? Not your business, but you started in the business.
That is a great question. And it's funny that you ask me that because I get asked that a lot. And when I really sat down and thought about it, I have been planning events since high school. I was a high school cheerleader, and I was
Okay.
always the one that they went to when it was time for an assembly or to choreograph a dance routine with a theme. And I was really into the costumes and the spectacle.
Sure.
So what's funny is I think that, I never thought of events as a possible career for myself. That
Yeah.
just wasn't even something. I grew up in a small town outside of Seattle. I didn't know any event producers. I mean, outside of maybe like a wedding planner or something, which I wasn't as interested in. And so, and then I went to my sorority in college, and again was very involved in the fraternity formals and the sorority get-togethers and the Mother's
Sure.
Day weekends and all of that. And then my first job out of school was for a company called Onboard Media out of Miami Beach, Florida. And you're going to laugh, but this was an actual job. And I will assure you, I was enormously qualified. I was hired to be the shopping expert
Okay.
on board cruise ships.
Oh
So
yeah.
we would,
That's
because this
awesome.
isn't, I'm not trying to date myself too much here, but
Yeah.
this was before eBay and online shopping and flash
Yeah.
sales and things of that nature.
Yep.
This was ultimately, people would go to St. Thomas to buy Rolexes and this, that, and the other in the duty free market to get them at a better price.
Yeah.
So I had to go on board these ships and come up with a sales and marketing plan that also matched the clientele of the ship with the clientele of the
Yeah.
ports and get them to take, their time in port to go and spend money.
Jeez.
And again, I did a lot of that through events. I would do,
Yeah.
brag brunches where women could come and show the diamonds that they brought and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
It is really funny. My boss at the time was like, you need to do a gem seminar and a watch seminar, and here's some scripts. And I was 22, 23,
Mhm.
super blonde, super young. And he
Yep.
wanted me to do almost like scientific gem seminars. And I had to tell him, nobody's going to buy this coming out of my mouth. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no way. I don't look like a scientist. I don't want to go up there and just read off a script. So I changed it all to trend seminars. And I talked about what celebrities were wearing and what the trends in
Wow.
Fashion Week were. And my sales just went through the roof. So again, it was all event based, and it was all kind of marketing and skewing things and this, that, and the
Sure.
other. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I got a job at the Mondrian Hotel and on the
Mhm.
Sunset Strip. And we did amazing events, and they hired me in, and
Mhm.
it just went from there.
Yeah.
So that was
And are
sort of my
you in
background.
are you in LA now?
I am.
Wow. Wow. We're gonna get into COVID, but what's it like in LA right now? Is it
Um,
starting to open up?
yeah, we are in what we are calling the orange tier.
Okay.
So we're allowed to do small in-person events outside,
Yeah.
really intimate small events inside. I think what's giving everybody a lot of hope out here is that Disneyland is now opening. And so, if Disneyland's willing to like figure that out, I think people are starting to see it. Theaters are starting to open. The Hollywood
Yeah.
Bowl just announced that they're going to open this summer. These are all places that are doing things at, minimum capacity and whatnot. But
Yeah.
again, like, it's funny how sometimes people just need to kind of see what other people are doing. It kind of sets the barometer.
Yeah. Honestly,
Um,
and it worked in both ways.
it does.
Felt like if people that were reacting or overreacting, it was like, well, if I don't overreact, then it looks like
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
care. And it becomes this ripple effect of,
it does.
like I feel I'm not saying that this was not a tragedy, but and I'm sure that you have private conversations about this all the time. It's just like kind of saying like the tragedy and the response to the tragedy, I don't know whether they were equal. And
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know what I mean? It's very tough, but I'm leading into that. So, you know, you were in this business before 2001,
Hmm.
right? So you have the business here. Now you have 2001, major tragedy in 2001 affects the economy. You start your business in 2007. 1 year later, the housing market implodes. It keeps going like this. And there's probably in your mind, you said, I've seen it all. And then
Yeah.
COVID
Yeah.
happens. And then they're like,
Yep.
by the way, I'm an event planner and you can't do events the way we've been normally been doing it my entire career. Go to work. What did you do?
Well, this is one thing I will say, since you're allowing me to brag a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I think one thing that me and my team are enormously strong at
Yeah.
is cultivating relationships that stick,
Okay.
and also being malleable to change and pivoting. I know pivoting is like the word du jour
Yeah.
recently, but
Yep.
we really do look at what we're able to offer
Mhm.
and engage with our clientele in a way that, I mean, my company is called Gina Wade Creative. If we didn't come up with creative solutions to things, then that would be a fraud.
Yeah, that's right.
So, so again, I think that also the fact that we're such a diverse company, when you look at the production that we do, and then also the
Mhm.
hospitality venues that we work with, some of our venues closed, some of them stayed open.
Mhm.
So we really utilize that time to sit down with them and figure out when this does reopen,
Yeah.
how are we positioning ourselves in the market so that we can be a viable option. My company started doing virtual events,
Mhm.
which we'd never done before. I had to get real good at Zoom real quick.
Yep.
And we did mailers to people. We've done a few events where they were virtual, but they got a delivery to their home,
Mhm.
and trying to get people to write you back with their address and who's going to be there and what their phone number is. That's like herding cats, but we managed to do that. You
Yep.
know, the one I will say, one of the things I'm most proud of is I have surrounded myself both with a team and with vendors that very much are solution oriented people. This is pre COVID.
Yep.
If you're one of these people that shows up and you're just like, there's a problem, I can't
Yeah.
work with you, because
Yeah.
problems and events are going to arise just like any business. So we all kind of I have surrounded myself with people that really look at problems and instantaneously
Yep.
come up with solutions. And
Yeah.
COVID was a big problem. And
Yep.
we just put our head down. And I think
Mhm.
that we're all very hopeful. I couldn't imagine a world where we lived in LA and there'd never be another movie premiere. I mean,
Uh,
so we
yeah.
knew it would come back,
Yep.
but we just had to find ways to connect and engage and be creative. And
Mhm.
that's what we did.
Mhm.
So it certainly isn't what it used to be, but
Yep.
I'm very happy to report that we've had a pretty successful year this year.
That's awesome. That's just so
Yeah,
cool.
it hasn't been horrible.
Yep.
It wasn't what it was supposed to be,
Yep.
but I'm grateful for every piece of business that my clients gave me.
That's awesome. Are you familiar with a guy named Scott Galloway? He wrote the book, I think it's called The Four. Um, Essentially what he did is he wrote the book and he says, you look at the whole world economy, right? And we think, oh, these are the numbers, but there's actually only like four companies. It's like Google, Amazon, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and there's one other one. It's it's a big one. It's obviously big. And it basically skews, if you took those four out, it's like we'd really know what the world looks like. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
But what he did was he talked about with COVID, he said that we were able to move from a technology standpoint, we were able to go 10 years, even 20 years in 2 months. And
Yeah.
so the people that got into Zoom immediately because they had no other choice, or where I'm going leading with this question is the people that got into a virtual world because they had no other choice. Did it open doors? Is it already in your mind? Are you saying, hey, if I could snap a finger and go back, am I going to go back 100%? Or was there some virtual channels now that I knew about and this allowed me to go into it because people had no choice? Or, you know what I mean? Or there was just certain things about remote communication that I'm able to do now that people feel comfortable with now because they were forced to do it. What did it do? Do you understand my question?
I think so. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. Most of what I was doing was not technical at all, as far as like
Mhm.
being virtual. I
Yeah.
mean, up until COVID, we had never done a virtual event.
Mhm.
And when this started, I had people that were contacting me saying, like, do you want to partner up and build this virtual platform? And we could do this. And and if I'm being
Yeah.
completely honest with you, I said to them,
Mhm.
this isn't going to last long enough for me to do that. I mean, I've really
Mhm.
made my name on
Yeah.
connecting people and giving people, especially when we work with brands,
Mhm.
events where they are truly having an experience that is reflective of the qualifications and the characteristics of that brand.
Mhm.
And that's really what we've banked our reputation on. So I didn't want to go too far down this techno rabbit hole because I truly at the beginning did not think that this would be a year.
Yeah.
I think what we've done really well is married the two concepts where, again, with a lot of our virtual events, they get a delivery to their home. So there is sort of this tangible thing that they're getting. We just did
Yeah,
something
sure.
for Hulu where we did an online cooking class, but everybody
Cool.
that attended got a basket delivered with all the ingredients pre-measured out, and some little
Wow.
baking things and some whisks and some cute, like a little
Jeez.
chef's basket and whatnot. So
Yeah.
we curate this sort of experiential part, a tangible experiential part, and then we partner it with the technological part. Now, one thing that I will say is that from what I'm gathering, a
Mhm.
lot of people really are itching to get back into in
Oh
person.
my
People
gosh.
want to engage and
Yep.
connect with people. But I think with some of the events we do that have a little bit more of a like a platform, like a convention
Yep.
or or a Q&A or a conversation, I think that for a while and maybe forever, there will likely be a virtual component to that, because even PodMax, I'm on the East Coast. So if
Mhm.
this was in person, I don't know if, and you guys are
Yeah.
if they're on the East Coast. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know if I would have had the time nor the schedule
I
to
know.
fly out to the
Yeah.
East Coast to do this. So it's
Your
nice to have
travel
this
would
as an
cost more
option.
than the travel would have cost more than the event itself.
Correct. And
Yeah.
again, it always for me is based on if we have events planned right now.
I
So,
know. Yep.
there's a
Yep.
lot of conventions and stuff that I get invited to, some of them
Mhm.
for speaking engagements. And the hard part is if we're doing Oscars,
Yeah.
I can't get on a plane. Like I have to be here.
Yep.
So
And
I
how
like
many
the idea that there's
yeah.
oh,
And how many team members do you have?
4 plus myself.
4. And then does it change how you communicate with them? I mean, did you have an office, or were you virtual prior?
This is where I lucked out. We had
Yeah.
an office that we had grown out of.
Okay.
And so we were getting ready. I was already in the process of looking for new office space. So when
Yep.
COVID happened, I kept my office because I didn't know how long it was going to last. And then we realized like it just was an expense, and we were going to be
Yep.
looking for new office space anyway. So we gave up our office, our physical office, in November, and we've been doing everything virtually. But we have been doing a lot of in-person events. We've been doing a lot of drive-ins. We've been doing a lot of filmings. Production
Yeah.
is definitely back. So my team and I do get together. We've all been vaccinated now.
Mhm.
So, but we always meet outside. They've come to my house. We've met at some of our venues and whatnot.
Yep.
But there is something to be said for, I think when we do come back, I could see us changing our schedule so that there's a couple of days where some of us are working from home,
Mhm.
but because we work in a creative element, there is something that
Mhm.
is very, very valuable to being in a room with somebody and bouncing off
Mhm.
ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's an
Yep.
energy to that and an excitement to
Yep.
that you just don't get virtually.
I know. And what was so weird though is that I enjoyed the parts of virtual that are really like efficient and cool stuff like that.
Yes.
But as people on my team, I have like 20 team members, and as they started to get vaccinated, some of them are coming to the office, and I don't know how to describe it. It's like there's a body language thing that happens when I can tell that you fully grasp the concept I'm saying, that you lose on Zoom. It's just
Agreed.
transparently, you just lose it, right? And a lot of people like I'll do the Zoom thing, but I'm not going to turn my camera on for an internal meeting. But I can't
Right.
see in your eyes that you totally got it, or that you're not multitasking. You know what I mean? But I was wondering whether it impacted. Could you see yourself hiring someone that's not local, maybe for the first time, because you've seen how remote might work?
It depends. It really depends. The thing is for us is, in fact, I'm going through this with my coordinator right now because she just moved into a new place and it's a little bit farther away. And she's up in Santa Clarita, and LA traffic. I mean, it hasn't been as bad during
Yeah,
COVID because people are hunkered down, but
I'm
you
familiar.
know,
Yeah,
right. So there's an
yeah,
efficiency to being on Zoom and working from home because it does cut out like hours in the day where we would be driving and commuting. But I will say the thing that's hard about hiring somebody remote is that I would say 85% of our events are LA based. So
yeah,
unless I'm hiring you just as like a graphic designer
yeah.
or a person that's helping me design decks or pull inspiration boards or this, that, and the other, I need you on property,
Hmm.
you know?
Yep,
Um,
yep,
because also, we have sort of a sales team and an ops team and a design team, but there are times we'll do like 2, 3 events in the same night. So it becomes all hands on deck. So I'm at one event, Marcus is at one event, Izzy's at one event. And so to have a team member that's, you know,
yep,
not just far away, but they'd also have to be on the same coast because the time zone thing gets
yep.
very challenging for us. So we'll see. I mean, you never say never,
Yeah.
I think if I did that, what I would love to see happen is have a GWC office on the East Coast and then
Mhm.
hire people there to manage that clientele.
Yeah.
And then we would communicate via Zoom
Yep.
on updates and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Very cool though. Very cool. I mean, I'm trying not to focus too much on COVID because I want to sort of live on a world beyond COVID and stuff like that. But I also want you to, when people hear this podcast, I want them to get an understanding of what it's like to work with you. Talk to me a little bit about the process. So I'm going to run a really big event. It's in Philadelphia. Um, it's going to be the cornerstone of my year. My budget, I'm just going to say, $500,000 or something
Sure.
like that, right?
Mhm.
Walk me through the process. What what do you do in discovery? What do you do on game day? What do you do afterwards to tell me it worked? What do you walk me through that?
Absolutely. So the first thing I think is most important is we have an initial call where I try to extract from you two things. Number one, what is at the end of the event, what is going to make you feel as though it was successful? Is that attendance numbers? Is it press? Is it influencer?
Mhm.
What is the traction that you're looking for? Because all of that is going to come into the design concept and also where we're going to spend your money. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? If you want, you don't care about press, everything's got to be Instagram influencers. Well, then I know that I have to create Instagrammable moments, postable moments, visual moments. So that's going to come
Mhm.
into play. If you're somebody that wants, you don't care about decor, it's more about I need 2,000 people in this space. Like I need them just to be there. We're going to
Yeah.
gift them. Da, 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 da. That's a different concept as well. That also is going to come into play with venue, menu selection, and ultimately how we're trying to work your budget. Also, ultimately, what are you trying to communicate? And who is your audience? So, if you are a brand and you're a new brand and you're like, we are a completely organic, sustainable, what have you, and we want people to experience what we are all about, that's also going to come into play.
Mhm.
um, so there's a lot of probing questions that I ask in the beginning
Yep.
so that A, we know how to manage the budget, and B, we know how to manage expectations. Then we typically fly out to wherever it is that we're going to go. We find a venue, we meet with the client face to face, we start compiling numbers, we pitch we'll do a pitch deck to them. Here's 3 different venues that we recommend. Which one do you like better? Here's some ideas for decor. It's all kind of like a streamlined process. So first we start with venue, then we'll start putting together a design deck with a lot of different options. I always tell people if they tell me they have a $500,000 budget, don't be surprised if I send you a proposal based on 750,000, not because I'm saying you need to spend that, but because I want people to see what everything costs.
Yeah,
Because I
man.
get a lot of clients that are like, oh, I need a photo booth and a gift booth and a this
Mhm.
and that. And then when they realize what that costs, then suddenly their priorities change. It's
Yes.
kind of like doing a
Yep.
home renovation. I watch all these home renovation shows and
Yeah.
they'll be like, oh, I got to have this floor and I have to have this. And then they see what it costs. And then suddenly they're like,
Yeah.
well, what's a cheaper option for the
I
floor? The
know.
floors aren't as important as the cabinetry or whatever. So it really does make people look at where they want to spend their money. Because I will tell you, it's rare that I get a client that really understands what things cost.
Yeah.
People are always surprised at what things cost. And so
Mhm.
once they see it laid out, they can make better judgments. Then we start, once we get the budget and the concept locked down, then we go into execution mode. And we're very good about walking the clients through the entire process. There's always changes. There's always a
Mhm.
CEO that is now coming and he has to have Grey Goose at the bar. We need to hire a
Mhm.
private server to make sure he's
Jeez.
handled the entire time and he needs a car and a hotel. There's always stuff like that that pops up. And I'm a bit of a money stressor. I don't
Mhm.
like to be surprised with my money, and I very much treat my clients' money like it's my own. So if they're
Yeah,
adding
sure.
things on, I immediately send another budget saying, okay, here's what those additions are going to cost.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
always have a little segment at the bottom that is literally characterized as client add-ons.
Yep. Yep.
Because you would be surprised how many people want all these things. And then
I
I will
know.
send them a budget and they literally say, why did it go up?
I know.
And
You
I'm like,
you,
well, remember those last 3 emails?
yeah.
That's why.
We use a program called Proposify. Our sales actually went up with it, but it's a proposal and it's literally on a website. And then there's these check boxes and it's almost like an online cart and there's a calculator at the bottom. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll show it
that's
to you. It's
cool.
awesome though. But like you
That's
said, they're like,
amazing.
oh my gosh, I want these booths. And then they click on it and then like click it, unclick it, click it, unclick it. Then they're like, You know what I mean? But it feels real when the math is live. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But I
Oh,
also
yeah.
find that it creates impulse buying, which as a
Mhm.
marketer, I enjoy. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Well, sometimes I think that's why we have to be so good about being visual, because
Yep.
I understand what it's going to look like. I'm a very visual person too, but sometimes they see it and they
I
want
know.
to buy it.
Yep.
And then when you're describing it,
I know.
they're kind of like, what is this? You know, if I'm like,
I
oh, we're going
know.
to do a Geronimo balloon cascade that starts at the top of the hotel and goes into the pool, they
Yep.
know that it sounds cool. But if I show them inspiration photos and visuals,
Yep.
and along with like, this is going to be, 10 grand, they're much more inclined to decide we have to have that,
Yeah.
than if I'm just describing it.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep.
But I'm not a person that likes surprises. So I
Mhm.
always pay that respect to my clients as well. There's nothing worse when
I
you're
know.
talking concept and changes, and everybody's got so much going on. So I always like to really communicate with my clients, like, these are the changes we made. This is the
Yep.
cost increase,
Yeah.
so that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. I do this thing all the time because we're not a low cost provider, but I give them this chart and it shows me higher than your competition. But then my line levels out and then their line's lower, but it always becomes
Yep.
higher because they scope creep and you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's one of these things where I'm like, like I what's called like I refuse to go below what I call the minimum viable model.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Just to win a
Hmm.
sale, if I win on price, it's just like that you're not going to be satisfied. We're not going to be satisfied. You know what I mean? So that's just one of the things that, yeah. So real quick though, so now you've come out to my place, you've done that, we've broken down price, we've broken down how scope creep can happen. You showed me a visual board, stuff like that. Now we do the event, and the event. What are you doing on game night of the event? Say it's a night.
On game day for an event, that's really easy. We are super, super meticulous about being scheduled. So we always send the client an overview, a complete run of show.
Mhm.
And I'm really astute with my team as to where their strengths lie. Now, we're a 5-person team, but for big events, we bring in a lot of
Yeah,
vendors
sure.
that we work with offsite. So there's a huge load in day. Load in days are a blast. I really enjoy load in days because you've worked, sometimes weeks, sometimes months,
Mhm.
where you know, we've conceptualized, and it's this and it's rendering. So to see it actually come to life is a really, really exciting day. And then to
Yeah.
see people get to experience it and see their faces light up and see people engage in the way that you thought they were going to engage, or maybe engage in a completely different way, is
Yep.
so fun.
Yeah.
So we were there on site, usually very early in the morning. We load it all in.
Mhm.
I typically, my operations team handles all of that receiving of the stuff, for lack
Yeah,
of a
sure.
better word. And then I show up, I roll in a little
Yeah.
later, and I make all the tweaks and I look at it from a design eye. Marcus is my director of operations, my director of production, and he has been with me for 12 years, 13 years,
Wow.
and he really oversees all of that. And he and I are like a married couple at this point. I mean, he's really like my work husband. He can finish my sentences.
Yep.
He knows exactly what I'm looking for. So I roll in and typically make the tweaks. And if something doesn't look right, I'll make adjustments and this, that, and the other, and just get it looking like really pristine.
Cool.
So I'll kind of cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And then we go into operation mode and we bring in our banquet captains and we bring in our operations people and our catering teams and this, that, and the other. Typically, when the event starts, I'm on the client. So I'm there making sure, gauging their energy, making sure that they're happy, answering any questions. And then I always say I'm not going to stay at the end of the event. I always end up staying to the end of the event. I
Oh,
mean,
sure.
I'm getting better about
Mhm.
pulling myself out, because again, I want my team to feel like I'm not omnipresent all the time. I want them to feel empowered.
Sure.
And then we have a loadout supervisor who is the one that stays there till 2, 3 in the morning. That is not me.
Yeah.
It was me back in the beginning, but now I
Yeah.
have an incredible team that handles that. And then we typically do a walkthrough at the event the next day at the event space, just to make sure everything got loaded out, make sure everything,
Yeah.
nothing was left behind. We bring in a cleaning crew. It's a
Mhm.
real process. I mean, it is truly a real process. It's like birthing a baby.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
mean, you're
say,
pregnant for
yeah.
9 months, and then you have this beautiful thing, and then
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
it's 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 a whole all hands on deck situation. And what's really exciting is watching the operations team really do what they do, seeing the
Yeah.
client react to it, and just see people in their element. It's a really fun process.
Okay. Give me one last bit of that. They're whistling that we have 10 more minutes, but I could talk to you for hours.
We'll do
So,
another.
yeah, that's right. That's
We'll
right.
do a part two.
So what about is there a breakdown at the end of like almost like an analytics of saying, hey, Mr. Client or hey, Mrs. Client, this is actually who came and this is actually what happened and stuff like that. How do you materialize, or I don't want to say ROI it, but like, what do you do at the end to resell it?
It depends on what they're trying to accomplish. So the easiest client is one that is doing something for social media influencers, because they can look at the metrics as far as how many posts, how much engagement, this, that, and the other, or press. I mean, if they're written up in Vogue, I mean, slam dunk, amazing, you know?
Yep.
So that kind of, I have a funny story about some bad press that I did on an event recently. And you know, that old adage, like any press is good press. This was pretty rough.
Yeah.
Not
I was
about
gonna
the
say,
event,
that's
just
not
about
always
the,
true.
just, no,
That's yeah. God, yeah.
it was true. I mean, it, like the press was dead on, but
No.
we'll get to that in a moment. But you know, just again, it really depends. Sometimes it's just about if it's a event that's there to engage people that are potential clients, or you know, we did a thing for Netflix for Stranger Things, and it was a ticketed event. It was not, Netflix covered the cost, it wasn't a paid event for Stranger Things. And we took out the old tower records on Sunset Boulevard and we literally turned it into a Stranger Things world. So it was very much based on
Mhm.
viewer interaction and fans and
Mhm.
whatnot. It sold out instantly. I mean, like we had every ticket sold in a second. It was a 3-day event, but you would walk through, we made it a whole 80s world. And we recreated
Wow.
the Starcourt Mall. We recreated the pool. We did a bathtub photo op moment. It was
Mhm.
incredible. And for them, it was just engaging with fans
Mhm.
and social media. That's all it was. Like they really wanted to make this imprint on the launch of this. And so really that's why I was asked that question at the beginning, because some of these things I'm responsible for and some of them they're not. Sometimes they'll have a PR firm that's doing all the press
Mhm.
outreach. So if the press
Yeah.
don't show up, the event might be beautiful, but they might not be happy, but that's really not
Yeah, sure.
on me.
You own what
You
you can
know,
own. Yep.
I get a lot of people that, and usually they're trying to get me to give them a discount, but I get a lot of this. We are going to have celebrities there and great people and this, that, and the other. And I always have to explain to people, well, I don't care if you have a retirement home coming to this party. It's really
Mhm.
not on me to get people there.
Mhm.
I'm just going to make it look really pretty.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
unless you're hiring me to do your guest list, then that's a different thing. So
Yeah.
so at the end, it really just depends on what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I've got one question. They're coupled together, and then I've got
Yeah.
two more questions to see if we can get it in. The thing is, who's a good fit for you and who's a bad fit for you as a client?
Oh gosh, that's a really great question. This isn't meant to discount what I do for a living, but I mean, nobody's going to die doing an event. Nobody
Yeah.
is, what I'm doing is a fun job. It's recreational and it's fun. It's not like being a surgeon. Nobody's, going to
Mhm.
die on my watch or whatnot. So I think the best clients for me are
Mhm.
the people that have realistic expectations of their budget, that are excited about the project. You know, they're working on a film or a premiere or this, that, and other with something they're really passionate about and they really love.
Yep.
And also people that are flexible, that trust us to do our job. That's probably the number one.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than people that hire you, like, oh, you're the expert, we want to work with you. And then they just can't get out of their own way. We
Yeah.
had one event, they picked a concept, we had it all laid
I
out, and I
know.
don't know if she was reading magazines or what, but she was like, what about this? What about this rustic look? And we were like, well, we went with a minimalist concept, so rustic doesn't really fit. It's like she almost couldn't get out of her own way. And I was like,
Yeah.
and we are at the top of your budget, so you want to add on twine wrap
Yeah.
napkins now? Like,
Yeah.
so it's good when people are, and also just people that are happy. I know that's probably a very sophomoric answer, but
Yep.
I work harder for people I enjoy. I
Yeah.
work
I
hard
get
for
it.
all my clients, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but
No.
there are just certain people that are almost like energy vampires, and they just it's just like a tug down
Yep.
where it makes everything harder when it's just challenging. And I think sometimes people confuse being challenging with being in control.
Mhm.
Like they feel like if they really get in there and like they're being heard. And sometimes it's like, yeah, but you're actually doing the opposite.
Yeah.
So I think those are the best people for us to work with. And also I think the hardest people to work with are truly those that are just they just have a skewed view
Mhm.
of their brand or their concept,
Yeah.
and they're just they just have an unrealistic idea
Uh-huh.
of what can happen.
Sure.
And I the hardest people that I've ever had to work with are the ones that just are draining, and they want favors, but they don't understand that if we're going to ask for favors, we have to be really accommodating. Like
Yeah.
they just can't like get out of their own way.
Yeah.
So luckily I haven't had to deal with that too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So we run into, just in the marketing world, if you don't really know who you are, and then you're
Yep.
hoping that I can just guess and find, it's like, you know, I use an analogy of like, I can't just build you a house and say, well, I'd like a garage, and I build you a garage. And you're like, well, I'll like it when I see it. I'm like, well, I can't just knock down this garage and build you a 2-car garage or a 3-car garage. It's
Agreed.
like, you gotta,
Agreed.
you don't have to know everything, but you do got to know something. You know what I mean? And
Agreed.
I can't put a basement under your house if you never told me you wanted a basement. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing too. Like people will say to me, like, what would you say, like, what do you think that's going to cost me? And I always use this analogy. I'm like, that's like you asking me, what should I pay for a car? Are we
Yeah.
talking about a Honda? Are we
Yeah.
talking about a Maybach? They're very different things. They will both
Mhm.
get you from point A to point B. But again, or just say, like, make it look like Paris. Okay. Well, my vision of Paris
Mhm.
could be very, very different than what
Mhm.
you're envisioning. So you just have to get me
Yeah.
more, you know?
Yeah.
Also, I think that when people don't communicate, that's the hardest part too. Because again, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah. That's tough. That's tough. All right. So in closing here, and this is where it gets a little not personal, but this is where I'm going to talk about you, the person here. Are you always on though? In other words, like, see,
Mhm.
I've had my business for 20 years, right? And like the joke I have is like I'm on like an escalator. I'll see like bad marketing, whether it's from a billboard to a bad website, and my brain, my wife, like she's right next to me, and she's like, I thought it was great. I was like, you just don't get it, right? But like, can you take your kids to Harry Potter World or wherever and just be like, oh, cool, we're gonna enjoy this? Or are you like, bet I could put a dragon on our next set for our next event? You know what I mean? Like, are you always
Yes,
on?
always,
Yeah,
always.
it's terrible,
I mean,
right?
and I'm unapologetic about it. Like,
Yeah.
one of the best things I realized, and it was sort of like a self-discovery thing. What I realized was I operate on a different frequency than most. And I think that there was a period of time, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, I'm sure you have, where there was a lot of messaging about take time for yourself, especially as a working parent. Take
Yeah.
time for yourself, do this, do that, this, that, and the other. And when it really became enormously apparent to me was I'm very, very close to both my parents. My mom had a really intense health issue. She was in a coma,
Oh, geez.
whatnot, and she's fine now. But during that period of time, I was still working. I was still taking care of my children. Like the train, the wheels couldn't come off the train. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I had to compartmentalize and do all these things. And I did have people and they had the best of intentions, but they would come to me and be like, you need to do some self-care and you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And I just kept thinking like, so now on top of everything else, I've got to go carve out a day to take a hike or get a massage. Like I don't, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then it just dawned on me. I was like, my self-care is keeping all this moving. It
Yeah.
really is. And
Yeah.
so I don't operate on a frequency where I feel good about taking an afternoon nap. I feel like I've lost time. And what I've really started to understand is that's okay. I love a good massage, a good spa day. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
love going to Harry Potter World with my kids. Absolutely. But I also get jazzed up about seeing things and seeing what other people are doing and
Yeah.
deriving inspiration from that. And what
Sure.
I've realized is I can do both.
Yeah.
But And it can be exhausting. Don't get me wrong. There are some days, especially when I've been talking and selling, and because I really enjoy people. It doesn't, it's not like I have to muster up the energy to have a conversation with somebody. I
Mhm.
really sincerely enjoy it. But it's not like I sit behind a desk and calculate data, for 8 hours a day. It's
Yep.
selling and getting people excited and showing them ideas and really putting myself out there. So there are times it can be enormously exhausting, but not enough so that I don't love doing it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I get it. I get it. Yeah, like I have this like huge fear of my kids drowning. And so I had them swimming at like, like
Mhm.
5 days old. Right. So we have this super duper awesome swimming school. And my wife is like, why are you in the owner's office? And I'm in there and I'm drawing on his board and I'm telling him all this stuff. Right. And then she's like, are you going to work with him? I was like, no, he could never afford me. And she's like, then why would you do that? I was like, because I can't not do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
can't,
I
like I
think
do
the
this because I
most
love it.
productive,
I do
right.
it because
Well,
I
and
love it.
that's the difference. And
Yeah.
the other thing too is like I'm so done, and I think this is another good lesson that COVID has taught me. I'm so done putting this weird guilt trip on myself that if
Yeah.
I'm in a room with my children, nothing else can be going on. I mean, I went back to work 10 days with both of my kids after having C-sections with both of them. I
Jeez.
had my child in a baby Bjorn doing a walkthrough, and this is just the way that it's got to go. And I said to somebody one time, I was like, listen, sure, he's 2 weeks old or whatever he was, sure, whatever. But this is the pace this family goes at. So he's joining this family
Yeah,
and he has to
exactly.
make concessions for us just as much as we have to make concessions for him. And this is, and in a weird, twisted way, because there is some parent guilt there, but in a weird way, I feel like it's showing my kids that they are not the center of the universe because they're going to have to get jobs someday too.
You're not kidding.
And secondly, I think it's been really impactful for both my son and my daughter for them to see me and their father as a partnership and to have them see how hard that I am working
Yeah.
to provide them with, private
Yep.
schools and clothes on their back and food in their bellies. So, and maybe I'm just telling myself this so that I don't feel like a horrible mother,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, I think that I'm just kind of, if COVID has taught me anything, it's that I have to strike a balance that works for me. And my balance might not look like everybody else's balance.
Yep.
But as long as it's healthy for me and my family,
We good.
that's all you can do.
Yeah, that's
Truly,
awesome.
that's all you can do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm sold. I'm a fan. Um, if I
Right back at you.
if I wanted to find out how to work with you, where would I start?
I have three good outlets. One is my website,
Mhm.
which is www.ginawadecreative.com.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/Gina Wade Creative. The one that's probably the best is my Instagram, which is at Gina Wade Creative. And coming soon, I'm going to
Okay.
be launching my own podcast. So more to come on that. And there'll be announcements on my Instagram.
Nice.
And I just started TikTok. We're kind of trying to figure out how to manage that, but that's at Gina Wade Creative too. So it's all Gina Wade Creative.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna see your dance moves too on TikTok
Oh,
here.
yeah.
We'll be ready. Well, thank you so much. I will take you up on the opportunity to have you back on the show. Would
I
love
would
to see
love
what you're
that.
doing after COVID, how you land on your feet, all that stuff. Like I said, a huge fan and really excited to share the hour with you. So this has been wonderful.
Thank you. You've made this so easy and made me feel so
Thanks.
welcome. So I truly appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you are a regular listener to Thought Leader Magazine, please check back often. I can't say that we're always going to have a Gina Wade on, but we are going to work very hard to have innovators, disruptors, and people that are really kind of changing their industry and changing the world. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will catch you next time.